So it's already 10:30, so maybe Rushton, we can start.
Happy to do so.
All right, so let's go. A very good morning to everyone and welcome to the first webinar presented as part of AFCC Digital, a lead-up event to the 2020 Asian Festival of Children's Content, which will take place from 3rd to 4th October later in the year. I'm Carlo from the Singapore Book Council. We are a non-profit organization which promotes Singapore literature and supports the literary arts scene through the programs we organize. I will be your MC for today. But before we start, I'd like to make some housekeeping announcements. For this session, the chat function is enabled and you are able to view comments from everyone, but you can only submit questions via the Q&A function button located at the bottom of your screen. Please be advised that given our time constraints and the number of participants for this session, we are only able to entertain a limited number of questions. The session will also be recorded and a red indicator button is now appearing at the top left of your screen to indicate the recording status. For this session, all participants are muted and video capabilities are turned off. Participants are free to leave the webinar at any point in time should you need to do so. All you need to do is click the Leave Meeting button located at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. There will be a short Q&A session with our speaker after his presentation, and we will be answering questions that have been submitted through the Q&A function. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce our speaker for today's webinar on digital storytelling tools, Mr. Rushton Hurley. Our speaker has trained teachers and school leaders around the world on creative uses of technology for fostering and sharing stories of success. A former Japanese language teacher and school principal, he now runs nextvista.org, a nonprofit based in the Silicon Valley that has helped educators all around the world discover the possibilities of digital media in teaching. He is also a featured speaker at AFCC 2020 this coming October. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mr. Rushton Hurley. Rushton, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Carlo. It is a pleasure to have the chance to share ideas with the audience in Singapore and regionally. And I am excited about the things that I am going to talk to you about because I have seen again and again that teachers get excited about possibilities when they begin to look at these things, not merely from the how-to, but from the why it's powerful for kids. And so as we go, do know that you are welcome to use the chat to share ideas. You are welcome to ask questions through the Q&A, and I will be excited to see what you might have to share. You'll note from my slides that I am not a text-heavy slide person. My goal typically is to have the visuals that are part of the slides emphasize the story that is being told in some way. And it is important for me to use what is available to me legally and to cite my sources. And for all you librarians out there, I know that's a good moment. So everyone, let's think in terms of watching for both the content and the citations in order to recognize the people whose work we're borrowing as we go. Let me toss out a thank you to begin with, first of all, to the Singapore Book Council. I so am honored to have the chance to be able to spend some time sharing some ideas, in part because I've got a little bit of history with Singapore. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm happy to meet you. And the first thing I think I'd say about myself is that my little nonprofit that I run, nextvista.org, is an online library of videos by and for teachers and students everywhere, free to use, free to contribute to, free to download from. It is all for a student audience, all screened content. It's my own little attempt to save the universe from ignorance, one creative video at a time. Whee! All right, so I hope you'll give that a look and share the many videos that you find there, and that perhaps even your students will become involved in creating things that we can highlight for teachers and students around the world. So in the early 70s, I was a student at the Singapore American School. I was actually at the Ulu Pandan campus instead of the new one that is pictured here. But that tie is an important one for me as a much shorter person than I am now. I remember waking up in order to see the first things that would be broadcast on TV, and the Singapore national anthem would come on, dun, da, Singapura. I remember, those moments in growing up and how much fun it was to be able to think of myself as part of the community there. And so it is fun to have this opportunity to reconnect. Now, when we talk about something like digital storytelling, we're doing this obviously at a time unprecedented in the world. And we look around and we think, how do we deal with these circumstances that we have? How do we help our students and our teachers and our community deal with the challenges of the coronavirus? How do we do these things? When we think about this related to education, the power of stories becomes all the more important for how we see opportunities for getting kids to believe in themselves in ways that perhaps they haven't before. So I would say that stories matter for all kinds of reasons. I'll identify 3 over the course of the time that I talk to you. But first, they matter to a school. So if you are part of any organization, I'll speak in terms of schools. It's what I know. I spend a lot of time talking to school teams of teachers at different schools around the world. I work with school leaders to help them see new possibilities for what they do. My goal is to help schools create an atmosphere where it is more personally and professionally satisfying for everyone. And stories are this incredible piece of how that works. So, for example, you take something like the tool that's out there, Write Our World. Write Our World is an effort. It's a nonprofit, a little effort that's, I think, based in Denver, Colorado. And what they do is they use Book Creator as a tool for getting kids to write stories and to record themselves reading those stories within the same tool. So Book Creator is one of these really interesting tools that's available to us. I'll mention it more as I go along. But that these kinds of things are out there, and students can begin seeing their stories and hear their own voices telling these stories, means that we are doing things in a way that we haven't before. When we expand the audience, things change, right? You can imagine this in terms of how the school actually promotes itself as well. No matter where you are, no matter how big or small the school, whether you're public, whether you're private, whether you're religious, whether you're independent, whatever kind of school you are, you have to let people know what's distinctive about the school, what is special about the school, what are the moments that allow students to begin to say, yeah, that was a part of who I am, right? And so in this particular example, you can imagine this particular school, which is the Christian Brothers Academy in New Jersey, and they had a student who had a featured video on my nonprofit site. And so maybe that's something that they celebrate through something like a tweet, like you'd see before. But getting that story out there, stories are not just those moments of getting away from learning in a more kind of direct sense. Stories are themselves how we describe the learning environment that kids encounter. And so these moments become really important, how we put these forward. These can be moments of service as well. So I think of Tricia Fugelstad and her students at Arlington Heights Elementary near Chicago, Illinois, and how her students put together these very small little ornaments. And they did these in a way just to raise money. They sold these in order to raise money to support a community that had been battered by a storm. This is a story of the school, and the students see themselves as a part of these stories. And in so doing, learning becomes memorable. One of the things that we see so often in schools is that we're simply asking people to check off boxes, go through hoops. Did you learn this? Good. Did you test? Fine. Next thing. Now learn the new thing. Did you test? Fine. What we're looking to do is not simply show that they can do little things, but to inspire them to see that they can do big things. And I think that's where stories become so powerful. These kids who were a part of this program at Arlington Heights Elementary, they will remember that, not simply because it was a great learning activity, but because in doing this, they created a video and a story that itself is celebrated. So when we use digital tools to tell stories, we begin to develop a much larger picture for how we think of ourselves as learners, as people who are capable of doing things in our community. And this is why I believe what we're talking about today is so important. I'm going to put a link in the chat. I'll do this from time to time over the course of our time together. And that link will take you to a set of winners. These are videos that won our service video competition. And I hope you'll open that tab so that you can come back to it later. There are 15 videos there that were created by students telling about people and organizations who make life better for others. That's part of telling a story in a different way. It's part of telling a story in a way that can inspire a student to begin taking seriously stories of all kinds. So often they see stories in a very narrow context, but our job essentially is to have them see the beauty in all stories and to learn that they can begin telling their stories as well. Now, stories matter for the school, PR. Stories also matter for quality in work. This can be PD, professional development, and how we think about getting teachers to see new possibilities in what they do in the classroom. But it can also be how we think of the individual student looking at what he or she does from a new angle. And one of the things I say so often when I am out speaking and talking about digital tools is this: when students know others will see their work, they want it to be good. When it's just for the teacher, they want it to be good enough. Did I get the grade I need? Did I meet the requirement? That's not especially inspiring, right? It is part of a process. It is part of a system, and that's fine. We have to have processes and systems. But if we are going to inspire students to truly see new possibilities, and when we are faced with global challenges, it becomes all the more important that our students become people who begin to think very creatively about what kinds of things they can do. When they start looking at things and not just saying, I know what it is, I can tell you what it is, but why isn't it this? And why couldn't we make this happen? That changes things. And when our stories, our digital stories, are shared as videos, as digital books, as audio pieces and podcasts, when these kinds of things are happening, students begin to think of their own work differently. If a teacher asks a student to write a one-page paper, what's their goal? One page, to get to the end of the page, typically. Not everybody, of course, but when you think about that as the frame, it changes when the audience changes. When they go from, am I finished, to here's what I've done. How do I make it better? How do I make it cooler, right? How do I get in that mode where when I share it, people respond, not just because it's fun to have likes, but because people are validating the work you do and the creativity that you have. So how do we move forward with something like this? How do we think about using these kinds of tools in ways that will allow our students to begin seeing new things in themselves? We're going to look at a variety of tools. And the first thing that we're going to look at is an audio tool. The audio tool we're going to look at is one that allows you to record your voice. Now, that may sound awfully simple, but there are a lot of good things that can come from that. This one is called SpeakPipe Voice Recorder. Now, the way this works, you go to this particular site. If you follow this link, and remember, you'll have all of these links. Let me actually get that in the chat as well so that we've got that ready for you. There we go. This particular site will allow you to record your voice. Don't do it now. Stay with me because I got a lot of things I want to tell you about it. But going back, what we'll see is that it's really, really easy to use. So here I am on the site. There is one button, right? Now I am logged in, but you can use this tool without any login at all. You do not have to sign up for an account. That means that in many countries around the world, this becomes something you can use with younger kids legally, because they can use it without having to provide any information, any identifying information for themselves. And it's very simply done. You click start the recording. Hello, we are talking to loads and loads of creative, cool people in Singapore and beyond, and it's good fun. And immediately you have this new page that has a play button. Hello, we are talking to loads. You know how that story ends. And if you don't like it, you can click reset, or if you're ready, you click save on server. And then it asks you for your name, but it's optional. You don't have to put it there. If you just click save, it will process the thing that you recorded moments ago. And then when it comes back, it has a new link right in here. Right in the middle, you've got a link that's specific to the recording that you just made moments ago. And if you open that particular window, this is what it will look like. So a student who provides that link would allow you as a teacher or a program person or a person who is gathering audible stories for your organization to have these different things that people submit to you. You can just play them. Hello, we are talking. Or you can download them, and you can download them as MP3s. Now, I will tell you that because this is this free service that they provide, the recordings only last for 3 months on their servers. But if you download them as MP3s, you'll have them as long as MP3 is a viable file format. So easy to use and pretty darn cool. If you do sign up for an account, you can actually create a page that allows people to click, and when they start recording and submit it, it just goes straight into your inbox, right? So your messages in your account on that. And so teachers, if you want your students to be able to respond to an idea while while they're not at school and doing work from home. You can say, what I want you to do is practice introducing yourself and doing this maybe in the target language that we're having you do. Or maybe I want you to tell a story about something that happened at a moment right after your meal today. What happened? And maybe you're trying to get a sense of, how do they talk about chores that they do, or the way they kind of see their life. There's lots of possibilities with it. But these are free tools. Everything I tell you about today is either completely free or has a free version. And these are the things that we can use when we are in this space as people who have become online instructors in order to be able to do that. And so Nandini asks, can SpeakPipe recordings be uploaded on a website? The answer is yes. So anytime you have an MP3, all right, you can bring that into any tool that allows you to embed them in. So there are SoundCloud, there are things out there like that, but you can also just provide the link so that you can go to it as well. So audio pieces are good for a lot of reasons. When we think about using digital tools, start simple. Starting simple makes a big difference, because if what you ask students to do goes from no use of digital storytelling tools to complex ones, there's going to be a lot of headaches along the way. And what you want to do is you want to be able to just work your way into it and have them become more and more confident about their ability to use these tools, and learn that their job, as they discover that there is an audience for what they do, is to refine it and make it good. When we teach writing, one of the most important pieces of teaching writing is that we are getting those students to learn that if they will revise their writing, if they go back and look at it and carefully rewrite it and think about the audience, and does that work for that audience? When they internalize those things, they improve their writing very quickly. But for a lot of kids, that feels like pulling teeth. Oh, do I have to? Oh, right. And if instead they learn to revise it because the audience has changed and they know everyone's going to hear it or watch it, that becomes very different. Let's keep going. Let's talk about how we see things using digital storytelling tools. There's something really quite magical about combining visuals and audio in all sorts of ways. And I'm going to show you several really cool tools for doing this. Starting with one that I mentioned a little earlier, Book Creator. Now, if we have time towards the end, I may actually give you a demo of this, but just to describe it really quickly, let me tell you, this is an opportunity to create pages, and when you play the book, it'll even like turn the pages as you go. It's a beautiful little thing, and you can have images there, you can add text in all sorts of different sizes, of course, but you can also add recordings of your voice. This is what this piece is right here. You can add video from within the same tool. You click record and video, and then you can do reflection on your learning. You can describe your thought process in a problem. You can begin to tell about your thinking as you were writing the stories you were writing. So a tool like Book Creator gives educators of all descriptions some wonderful opportunities to capture the learning that's happening in the classroom. When we talk about digital storytelling being important for a school, that starts with teachers being able to gather things that can be shared. So you look at something like a digital book or a good audio piece, and you're on your way. But we're going to really spend a little time here with Adobe Spark. Now, I find this to be a beautiful combination of easy and looks good, all right? And so when you think about having students tell digital stories, you want them to feel like this is something I can do. So in looking at Spark, we're going to take a look at this screen. Now, I have done several things before I got to this point, right? So you do have to create an account. The account is free. You can create an account tied to a Google account, for example, or a couple of other possibilities on that, so that you just associate the two and you have the account. And then you choose a project to start and you choose video. There are many different things that Spark allows for you to do. Now, when you first come to this, you might say, wow, you seemed awfully excited about it, but frankly, it looks just a little bit like PowerPoint to me, right? And it's not that PowerPoint's a bad tool, but it's been around for about, what, 700 years or whatever it's been at this point. And it's not the kind of thing that might excite a student, just in terms of showing their learning. Now, depends on how you use it, of course. But I will tell you this, while this looks a little bit like a slides tool, actually each slide is a component of a video you are making. So each of these slides down here is a piece of the video. And you add the visuals by going into the middle, clicking on the little plus sign, and adding either a video that you upload from your device. some text, a photo that you upload or that you search for, or an icon that you search for. So I'll start by adding text, and I'll just say Singapore. So here we are talking about Singapore. And I want that text to be bigger and maybe bigger again, and there we go. And then by clicking the plus in the white piece down in the lower left, I add another slide. The slide is really a piece of the video, right? And I'm going to say, give me an icon. And then it says over here, well, search for an icon. I say, well, I'm looking for Singapore. And up pop a number of different little pieces. And oh, look at that, the first one. All right, there we go, Marina Bay Sands right there. And this becomes one of those little things where you're adding a cool little visual and you're making that a part of this video that you're creating. So I click it again and I'll say add a photo. It will automatically search on Singapore because I just searched for that when I was looking for an icon. So all of these are from Unsplash, which means that they are legally available for you to use, which is very nice. And now I have these three pieces. I have, the text, I have the icon, and I have the image. Now, you might say it still looks a lot like PowerPoint and a bunch of slides to me. Well, here's where the magic comes in. So I go back to the first, and I click and hold the red microphone button right here. Here we are, and I'm going to introduce you to a couple of famous sites in Singapore. This is the Marina Bay Sands Hotel, a quite amazing place, and they even have a swimming pool up there, which is really quite daunting to be in, looking down a long, long way towards the ground. Note that it said keep it short, right? If you just keep talking, it tells you, keep it short. I go to the next one. Here's a photograph of that hotel seen from the colorfully lighted Merlion. Now, hopefully your students will come up with something much more profound than what I just have, but there you go. Now, having done this, you can play any individual slide, clip, piece, right, to see what it's like, or you can come down to this play button here at the very bottom and you can see what it has done for you. And this is what it has created on its own. Here we are. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of famous sites in Singapore. This is the Marina Bay Sands Hotel, a quite amazing place, and they even have a swimming pool up there, which is really quite daunting to be in, looking down a long, long way towards the ground. Here's a photograph of that hotel seen from the colorfully lighted Merlion. Now here's what I want you to do. If you look at that and you go, that's pretty cool. I like that. If you like that, put a yes in the chat. If you're like, no, not interesting enough, then put a no, and that's okay. No judgment, all right? But do that. Add that to the chat right now so we can kind of get a sense of what you're seeing. So I'm seeing a lot of yes, some maybe. Fair enough. Oh, that's all good. That's all good. And I would say that the vote is moving heavily in the yes direction. Fair enough. It may be an imperfect measure, but you get the idea, right? When you see something that is easy to create, when you're moving from a concern about the nature of the tech to the nature of the story, now we've got something a little more powerful to work with here, and something that's really quite exciting for these students as we go. I'll come back to the editor here. Nur El Huda asks, can the videos be inserted in Adobe Spark too? Yes, you can bring MP4 clips up into it. So when you have a new slide, video is one of your options. So you could bring together several little pieces. There are other things you can do as well. You can change the music. You can upload your own music if you like. And once you are done, you click share, and the options are publish and invite. All right, and so invite means that you're actually collaborating with somebody else to build this. But publish means you're actually putting this out online. Now, by picking a category and creating a link, you'll get a link to your video that is on an Adobe page. Now, you could also download it. There is also the option to download right here. But if you download it and then say upload it to YouTube, I love YouTube, but there are a lot of distractions on a YouTube page, right? So you go to a YouTube page and there's like the related videos on one side and all of the comments and that kind of thing. I quite like the Adobe pages for their simplicity, right? It's just very, very little to distract. So you've got different options about how you share this video that you've created. Now, looking at this again, think, what kinds of things might students begin to tell you about? So all kinds of stories. These can be creative stories that they write. These can be things that suddenly are a part of how they describe what they're doing in science, where they've taken pictures of each step along the way, and they're describing the scientific method as they go. They could be taking pictures of math problems and describing their thought processes as they work through complex problems. They could be showing pictures of particular places in history that they have gotten from Wikimedia Commons and talking about the connections to their history classes as they go as well. There are so many possibilities with this kind of thing. They could be doing ancestor programs where what they're doing is they're learning about their genealogy and beginning to bring family pieces there together as well. They could be talking about their community in ways in order to share with students in other classrooms around the world. These stories are big. So some great comments, some questions are coming into the chat. It'll be a little easier for us to follow them in the Q&A, but we'll try to catch them here as well. Animations, can these be done on the slides? If the animation is turned into a short video, you can certainly do it that way. I'm not entirely sure if you can put in like an animated GIF in there. It's a good question. Let's see, what else do we have? Will videos created by Spark go into public domain by default? Ah, great question, or owned by Adobe. As I understand it, check the Adobe site to make sure. You retain rights to anything that you create, but like YouTube, you've made it publicly available. So it doesn't necessarily change the license, but what it does change is your ability to kind of control what happens to it once it is out there. So looking at a tool like this, we get into that mode where we're starting to think about, well, what is it that I want my students to do? And once I have them show it to each other, what will that mean for how they think about how they do their work? This relationship to quality is huge. What we want for them is to really feel like I can make it better. Give me some ideas. I want your ideas on how I can make it better. I want people to watch this and be excited about what they see. And you know, it'll happen. Just in the same way that so many of you didn't simply put yes in the chat, but you said, yeah, and you had like all these different things. Lots and lots of people are going to watch videos that students make and respond really, really well to them. Very encouraging, very validating for people to say, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? Can you show me how? Those are big moments. Should you only want a select group to view the video, how would that work? Oh, great question from Angela in the Q&A. So if you want to do that, what I would suggest is that instead of sharing it through, let me take you back here. Instead of sharing it through the Adobe page, download it as, what it'll download as an MP4, and then upload it to YouTube as private. And then you can directly share it with people whom you put in like that way. So it's shared privately. If you need a little bit more latitude than that, you can share it in YouTube as unlisted, which means only the people with the links will be able to see it. It's not found via a search. Is there any guidelines in making a great story? You know, that is one of those questions that we could probably kind of spend the rest of the weekend answering, right? I would say that the first order of business with a great story is that the student has been inspired to push him or herself in directions they haven't gone before. So it is great for what it means for them. The next piece would be that as they look at what they've done, they begin to think about how to make it better. We want students to go from, I'm just doing what I've been told, which is better than saying not doing what you've been told, right? But to go from that to, I'm looking to make something amazing. And you think about children, when we talk about the Asian Festival of Children's Content, in a sense, we are celebrating creativity at its purest level, because children are not hampered. You know, the older we get, oh, I don't know, people might not like it. Oh, you know, children are like, look what I did, right? And that's big. So as we look at these pieces about a great story, as we get older and begin to develop more of what becomes like sophisticated and interesting and intricate and nuanced in their stories, it's because they have learned that they can different people and begin to share it in interesting ways. That's something that I think can really make for a great story. Let's keep going. So there are some other things that I would mention about this. For example, there is a set of schools in Franklin, Indiana, and I showed them how to use Adobe Spark a couple of years ago. And now, every Friday afternoon, they put out the Franklin Minute. And the Franklin Minute is what is their opportunity to tell the stories of their schools. So your school, if teachers are sending an image and just a few lines, maybe a sentence or two, you could have someone quickly put together a story that says, and in Ms. Lee's class, they've been working on these projects related to their research on different kinds of environmental sustainability. You know, it could be anything, right? And our basketball team won their first game last week. Let's hear it for them. So a few images, one person working very quickly in Spark can create a weekly message about what's going on at the school. Every school is working to develop its connections with its community. And so this, as something that can be shared easily, is a good way of doing it. And the Franklin people, they get loads and loads of people in the community talking about the different things that they share. Now, there are other tools, of course, and I want to mention them so that you've got a good sense of what you might do with some of these as well. Screencastify is one of many different screencasting tools. Now, let me explain what a screencast is. So there are lots of kinds of video, right? There are video where you take your camera, hopefully you do that, depending on how you want to share it, I suppose, and you just record somebody doing something. That's one kind of video. Another kind of video is when you have stills that you narrate over as you go. Stop motion video would be another kind of video. There are a lot animations, right? There's a lot of different possibilities for video. Another kind is what's called a screencast, where the visual is what's on a computer screen, and what you are saying as you narrate it allows the thing to come together as a video. Now, you've seen this in, say, a Khan Academy video where you know the particular person is writing something on the screen and then talking about it as they go. That's a screencast. Screencastify is an extension for Chrome that allows you to do these kinds of things as well. So I am a big fan of Screencastify. It's one that I use whenever I want to make something really, really short that's just involves something on a screen. Maybe I'm explaining something that's on a web page, or maybe I'm going through some slides kind of like I'm doing right now so that I can have a quick video. So give that a look, Screencastify. I would also encourage you to take a look, for those of you who are ready for something a little bit more sophisticated, is WeVideo. So this is multiple track, audio track and video track, multiple track video editing online. So it's kind of like iMovie from back in the day in terms of its look, and it's available online, right? So you can go to any particular computer, log into your account, and keep working on your video. Now, those of you who use Chromebooks, you'll note that all of these tools I've mentioned are tools that will work just fine on a Chromebook. Now, in the United States, Chromebooks have fast become the #1 device in schools because they're cheaper, they're simple. If something goes wrong with them, you just pick up another Chromebook, log in, and you're good to go. That's not to put down any other device. There's loads of reasons to have different devices. But we want things that can work for anybody. And so if families can only afford, say, a $150 Chromebook or something like that, we want good tools for them. And it turns out that these tools that I'm describing to you are those kinds of tools. Now, I do want to make sure that you know that when we talk about what you do with your stories, I got to tell you a little bit about my nonprofit as well. Because what I want for the students who create is to be celebrated for their work. So in our library, we have videos about all kinds of things. We have our light bulbs videos about different academic topics where students and teachers have created short videos explaining something. And we have contests where we ask kids to do that in 90 seconds or less, creatively explain something one might encounter in school. There are global views videos, which are about communities in different parts of the world. If you've got a group of students in Little India, and what they're going to do is say, we're going to tell you about our community, and they shoot a 2-3 minute video and they want to put it somewhere where other classrooms can see it, I would be honored to have it in our little space to do as well. We have a service via video contest that I'll mention again a little later, and I mentioned earlier about kids creating stories, telling stories about those who make life better for others. We have more. We have videos about different careers, over 100 in that category, and we're trying to build the largest collection of free videos for English language learners anywhere. So we have over 600 videos in that section as well. So all of this is stuff that I hope that you'll take an interest in and that you'll stay in touch with me about. Later on, I'll ask you to sign up for my newsletter. It's all free, and I'd love to be in touch with you going forward about ways that my nonprofit here in Silicon Valley can work with your school or your organization in your country, Singapore, wherever you might be joining from. I remember seeing somebody is here from Riyadh. That's really cool. Ramadan Mubarak, I believe, I hope I got that right. But basically, we get to that point where we say, all right, we say stories matter for the school and stories matter for student quality. But the truth is that stories matter for you as well. Because when you have kids who have pushed themselves to that next level, right, so that they are really beginning to take a certain pride in their work, they're not just showing that they can get the grade, they're actually bringing their creativity to it as they go. That means that you are seeing yourself as an educator, whether you're in a school, a library, any kind of organization. And that's a chance for you to see yourself in a new way. And that matters because our creativity matters. I'm gonna finish this part of my presentation with a story. And the story is about the grandson of a friend of mine. I have this friend in Wisconsin, a state here in the United States, who is a teacher. She's a grandmother, wonderful, wonderful lady. And she has a grandson who has a condition, cerebral palsy. Now, if you know anything about this condition, what you need to know is that the exercise you get as a child will determine much about your mobility for the rest of your life. So if a kid has this condition, there are things they want the children to do so that they will be better off later in terms of their mobility. And they wanted Sue's grandson to ride a tricycle. And he didn't want to. And it's not really that mysterious why. It hurt. He would get on that and it would hurt his little legs to be on that tricycle, so he didn't want to do it. But they knew that if he didn't get that exercise, it would have a profound set of ramifications for how he'd be mobile for years and years to come. So one of his teachers, in hearing the story about how they were trying to get him to ride the tricycle, said, I think I know. I think I know what to do. And they said, sure, anything, just give it a try. And so she went to the little boy and she said, we'd like you to get on this tricycle and ride it around. Nope, don't want to. No. Not just for you. What we want you to do is we want you to give Puppy a ride. And see, those are the moments as teachers that really stand out for who we are, right? This kind of creativity brought to what we do means life changes for students. We see in these kids possibilities that they may not see in themselves. They may find something to be worrisome or harmful or they hurt, this kind of thing. But sometimes we can help them get over those things with our creativity, where we get into that space where we say, we want you to be able to take that next step. And I think that's something beautiful that becomes the storytelling of our work, of our students' lives, of our organization's attempts to create something better in the world around us. That's who we are. So if you have questions, please start tossing them into the Q&A. I would love to be able to share some ideas with you going forward. While you're putting those together, I'm going to go through the final slides. Remember that you will get these slides. I'll give you a link to get back to all these slides as well. The link is actually at the bottom of this page at the moment. But this first slide, if you come back to this, you'll see that there's a lot of contact info for me. You're very welcome to stay in touch with me. You will find that I've written some books, all right? And these are books that I hope will be useful to things that you do. I keep a blog that might be interesting to you as well. And there is that newsletter. So I would love for you to sign up for the newsletter. And what I'll do real quick is I'll call that up and get that link in the chat, because I'm hoping that as you go forward, you'll say, yeah, I'd like to keep hearing from this guy. Hopefully I haven't scared you off on that front. So that link is now in the chat, along with a bunch of free resources that you'll find as a way of building off of what we've got. I've shown you as a part of this particular presentation. So those slides are in as well. And I'll tell you a little bit about the books real quick. So my most recent book was published in December. It's called Technology, Teamwork, and Excellence. And it's about how school leaders use technology to to improve possibilities for their school, foster stories, to share those things in ways that are good for everybody. Additionally, I've written books on how to improve as a teacher. So 50 very short chapters on how to do that, and books on how to improve as a school, how to work with your colleagues to make the school a more personally and professionally satisfying place for everybody. Now, my blog is at rushtonh.com, which you'll be able to get to from the links here and from the other links in the slides. The different contests that I mentioned that my nonprofit runs, I hope you'll take a look at. So Creative Strength is our 90-second video contest. We still have several weeks before the deadline for this part of the year. I hope you'll give that an interest, along with our service via video contest, which is about kids just telling about good people and good organizations in the community. And there is the English Language Project, which I hope you'll take a look at. So this is me, or at least the peanutizeme.com version of me. There is my email address. I answer every email I get eventually. And the videos are at nextvista.org. The newsletter sign up is there and also in the chat. And there are these slides as well. So with that, what I'd like to do is hand it back over to Carlo, who has been very patient as I've rambled my way through the presentation. Thank you again for having me be a part of this today.
Thank you very much, Rushton. Can everyone hear me? Okay. It's great to see you again, and thank you very much for doing the session today. So we've now reached the end of the presentation, and we're open for questions, and we're seeing a couple of them coming up right now. So please be reminded to put all of your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen if you wish to ask Rushton anything. And also later at the end of the program, we'll be flashing a QR code. We would love to hear from you about your feedback on the session for today. So maybe, Rushton, let's go through the questions right now. So the first question is, do you have any tips on suggesting how to encourage teachers to be creative in storytelling?
Absolutely. The first piece of advice would be the same piece of advice we'd give our students. Just give it a try, right? Get in and see what you can do. If you get into one of these tools, right, something like Book Creator or Adobe Spark, you begin to just kind of see possibilities in it, but you just start trying. And be open, if you're an educator, right, be open to showing students what you're doing and saying, I know that when you start doing this, you're going to learn things that you can teach me. It's really exciting for kids when they can teach their teacher something, right? So be open to that creative possibility. It creates a rapport that's really powerful with the kids. So I would say, look at these and think along those lines. Now, if you want to develop kind of more ability with any given tool, the place to go, of course, is YouTube. And you say, okay, Adobe Spark video tutorial, right? Or, beginner, things like that. And you'll find videos that are good. Now, you'll find a variety of videos, and when you find one you really like, here's the pro tip. Click on the name of the person who put it there, because that person may have posted other videos, and you already know you like that person's style of explaining, other videos that will help you learn more about it.
Thank you for that question. Now, someone is suggesting, do you have any thoughts about having a live narrator telling a story with voiceover over images? And maybe some advice also for parents who are interested in storytelling. Is that also a way for them to actually start getting the kids involved into appreciating content?
Absolutely. Carlo, I love that you actually combine those two questions because they're two good ones to combine, right? It's very easy, like I showed in Spark, it's very easy to just pull in images and then start voiceover, right? To create a video out of that. And that's something that people can have a lot of fun doing together. So think of it like I was talking about, start simple and move to more and more complex tools as you go. That's something that kids can get really excited about really quickly. So if a parent is saying to the kids, like, let's create a video for grandma, right? Let's create a video that tells about your day. Let's take a picture and you tell me what are the different times during the day that we should have a picture. So here you are, eating breakfast, and here you are, doing your chores and sweeping the floor, whatever it might be. Engage them in a process of saying, how can we do this? Because the earlier it becomes natural for them that this is a possibility, the more creativity they'll be able to bring to it as they go. And always kind of be open to their ideas with it as they begin. What if we do this? And you say, I don't know. I'm not sure how to do that, but maybe we can find out. Let's Google and see if we can learn it. Those kinds of things can be really good.
Do you have any age recommendations for when they should be using the tools that you mentioned for today? Particularly because I think the first graders, second graders, they might be able to, but anything for preschoolers?
So obviously, the younger the child, the more hand-holding they'll need to do it. But simply asking the youngest students, like, hey, what is it you'd want someone to know about you? Tell me something about you, right? And then, we'll take a picture together, and we'll make that a part of the story of our class. So you can engage them in how this works, even at a very early age. And for them, that's quite exciting because they genuinely know that they've been a part of the process of coming up with that story. They've been asked questions instead of just being told what to do. So I completely agree that even first graders, are going to be fine actually beginning to craft these things together. And you just want to try to get them doing as many different kinds of stories as possible. Let's tell a little bit about our school. Let's tell a little bit about our community. What's something we hope for the future? What is one of your favorite stories, and can you describe why? Right? There are a lot of different prompts that you can use with these kinds of tools to end up with some pretty cool learning activities.
Maybe before we continue with more of the Q&A, Russian, can I request for you to flash the socials and the feedback Q&R, just so
Yeah.
people can also give us their feedback while we are doing the Q&A right now. And we'd like to thank everyone who's joining us for the sessions for today. So let's continue with the Q&A. Is there a critical difference between digital storytelling and in-person storytelling? And I think the reason for that being we have storytellers actually attending today, and I guess they're wondering, how does that differ from what I'm doing right now?
That's a cool question. So what I would say is that it's more of a blurred line than sometimes people would think. So obviously an in-person storyteller who is really good at the sweep of capturing a kid's attention, via gestures and things like that. That's much harder to do in terms of digital tools, right? On the other hand, you've got a different set of possibilities with digital tools, using certain kinds of effects in particular ways. And I think really powerful storytelling, those people who are just really, really talented at it, they use whatever is available. They figure out how to tell a story with whatever they have. And so a storyteller who's really used to doing it one particular way may be fabulous at that, but may be nervous about doing it a different way. And that's natural. It's completely natural. Matter of fact, that may become the basis of a story. I was nervous about doing it this other way because this is what I knew. And that becomes a lesson for kids who are learning to push themselves out of their envelopes as well.
We got a really interesting question about experiencing interactivity with digital storytelling.
Mm.
Um, I guess the question there is, how do you encourage people to interact? And then at any point, does that encourage peer learning as well?
Excellent, excellent question. So any of these tools that allow for collaboration. So as you saw in Spark, you can invite collaborators and work on things together. You can do this in WeVideo and I think the paid versions. But you can do this with, say, Google Slides and those kinds of tools as well. Anytime you have that, now you can begin saying things like, okay, we're going to have a team here, and we've got another team at our partner school in San Jose, California. And so as our kids are going to make like the first part of the story, their kids are going to make the next part, and you can kind of go back and forth that way, which is I think kind of fun and interesting. That's an interactive element that is it's an essential part of ad lib when people are getting together and they're kind of riffing off of each other in terms of comedy and stories that way. I think that can be a point of a lot of confidence building for students when you do that as stories in this kind of space.
Thanks, Rushton. We're going through what are the minimum requirements for Adobe Spark. This is quite technical, and they're asking quite technical questions. Computer memory, can I use it via smartphone? I think it's because some people have different technical requirements, and that's really, I think that's quite an interesting question.
Right. So I am going to give you a very good but perhaps not very satisfying answer to this, and that it works this way, right? Just try it. So if you're not sure if your laptop can handle it, and the older the machine, the older the processor, the harder it is for a lot of the newer tools, right? You may find that it just doesn't handle it very well, and that may be the point where you're like, well, time to buy a new machine, a Chromebook, or a nice laptop, or whatever it's going to be. On a mobile device, it is a different issue. And so you just need to see if there is a Adobe Spark video app available for your particular device, whether that's an iPhone, an iPad, an Android device, whatever it may be. You'll need to see what's available. That kind of thing changes often enough that to tell you one thing now might be completely inaccurate in 2 months when someone's watching the recording. But you can also do things like say, Adobe Spark for Android. And if it's not there, having Googled that may point you to something that's actually quite close to it.
That's true. Someone is asking about creating bilingual content, whether there's an app or a method that allows people to do that. Would you have any thoughts on that?
So in a sense, all of these tools will do it, right? So for example, think about Book Creator and where you have an image and then you have these audio recordings that, you click plus and then, record voice and then, you do that. You could do this in multiple languages as you go. And especially if you've got kids learning another language, having them do both their own language and the target language as a part of the stories they create can be quite validating for that sense of, well, but I'm kind of new at this language. I'm not sure if what the other person will think of me in my kind of broken fill in the blank language you're learning. However, if those people can also hear you in your native language, that may take away that particular stigma of trying this. So I think that's actually like one of the ways to go about it. Certainly in videos, you can switch back and forth. You can tell it either through multiple versions of the video or through piece by piece by piece. One important thing I would say, keep videos short. The projects you do with students, keep them short, right? Because long projects can bog down and then becomes more about a process than it is about kind of what they're creating. And by introducing the constraint of short, you can actually get some real quality out of the students. So in our educational video contest, for example, like the Creative Strength one, 90 seconds or less. And sometimes people will say, oh, no, that's not long enough to be able to do what I want. Really? Why is that? Because there are these 3 things. Okay, make 3 videos. It's fine. You can do it. Right? And learning to get down to the things they need to say is actually a really good pedagogical goal. Because if they have unlimited time, they will add way too much to their video. They will add, bloopers that they think are funny. They're never funny. All right. So time limits are a good thing.
Yeah, that's good advice. How do we convince more people to proactively use available digital storytelling tools to reach a wider audience? I guess because it's new and it's because of COVID, so people are pushed to actually do digital content. But how do we convince people in general to proactively use all of these?
So when I speak, when I visit a school, when I'm working with a school to try to help them develop a stronger staff, professionalism, morale, whatever it might be, help them tell their stories better. What I want them to do is not just act or not just think about a problem, but to act on it. So in a sense, when I present, my goal is not to speak just to the head, here's how to do this, but to the heart, here's why this is important, right? And so to answer that question, the answer is do it, right? Create things that you start sharing. Put on a contest, right? If you work with the fill in the blank name of the organization, have a student contest where you reach out to folks and say, look, we're looking for 30-second pieces that address this or this, and we're going to give away some little thing, and it doesn't have to be much, right? But just get people to start sharing things. As soon as you try it once, somebody's going to create something cool, and then once something cool is out there, everybody else is like, okay, now I want to try. Like setting that bar is important. One of the things I talk about quite a bit is that we don't spend enough time talking about the pedagogical value of fun and cool. That's not to take away from the importance of rigorous intellectual pursuit with our content. That's not to take that away at all. But when kids are excited about what they're doing because it's like, oh, this is really cool, this is fun, that means they're going to push themselves in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise. So I would say go do, right? That's the way to get more people involved. And once they see that it can be done and you're like, oh my God, my grandma made one of these. What excuse do I have, right? So They'll start doing
it. Exactly, exactly. Last 5 minutes before we end the session. Really interesting question about how to manage parental concerns over online content censorship and data protection. Primarily, our attendees asking if educators have to edit the content that some students also submit. Uh, any thoughts on that, Rushton?
plenty. There, it is certainly the role of the teacher to take a good look at anything before it becomes public. I mean, you don't get away from that, right? I mean, you have to, if students say, I've created this material, you have to give it a look, right? Because kids will push boundaries, that happens. And you need to be the voice of, all right, that one we won't be able to add. Well, why not? There are reasons. So for example, you're filming your older sister, like in a swimsuit, and I mean, and like that's just not appropriate for our setting, because sometimes when you do something like that, you're really portraying her out to be more of an object than a person, and we hold ourselves to a higher standard. It's an opportunity in a sense to bring a message to kids that they may not be hearing at home. So getting them in that space where they go, oh, maybe it's because of how we think about others. Maybe when I am in this space, I am expected to think about others in a way that isn't usually talked about. And so the censorship can be part of the learning experience as well, right? Now there are, of course, much more complex topics related to censorship in general. I was really quite amazed recently to see that a space had been built in Minecraft that was it was like all like censored books from around the world or something. I mean, there are these really interesting questions going on of censorship around the world at the moment, and what that means for us. But how we begin to put these things together, being able to go back to a student and say, can you tell me that story in a different way, and still make it powerful. For example, one of the people in the Q&A asked about comics, right? Comics can be a really powerful way for students to tell a story. And I'll take you back to Book Creator on this, right? The different ways of creating stories in Book Creator include options for comics as the default pieces. So you can have the bubbles and the style of the panels and everything. That's actually a really cool way for building those things. So Book Creator, app.bookcreator.com. And you can get to that via that particular slide that I added as I went.
And just quickly, because we're almost out of time, but I think we have time for one more question. But just a reminder to everyone who's attending today, please help us to improve our webinars in the future. So please snap a picture of that QR code and answer our feedback form. As a closing question, I guess we could have this one. At this time when attention spans actually seem to be getting shorter and shorter, how do we work with children to create content that will keep them interested, but at the same time, we deliver important information for them?
I think it's actually, I'm not entirely sure that we have explored the complexity of questions around attention span. It may be that we've had the same attention span we've always had it. We were just more polite about it in the past. I mean, that's possible. However, it may also be that attention span is limited when kids aren't challenged enough. Why do kids have unlimited attention span for certain games? It's because they're challenged. They're challenged to try to achieve something, and achieving something is interesting in that setting. We can learn from those kinds of approaches to say, how do we make things a little more interesting in our classes? Now, I could spend an entire hour talking about that, but I would say the short end of the story is that let's ask more and more interesting questions of our students, and we may find that they have more patience for the things we're asking them to consume.
And with that, we'd like to thank you very much, Rushton. We've now come to the end of our session for today. Just a note that Rushton Hurley will be a featured speaker at AFCC 2020 this coming October. So that's the 3rd and the 4th of October. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope this has been a fruitful session for you. And again, please feel free to scan the QR code on your screen to give your feedback about the session. As an independent charity with IPC status, the Singapore Book Council relies heavily on individual donations to help us promote a diverse multilingual Singapore literature. So please donate to us so that we can organize more events like this, especially during these challenging times. You may contribute through giving.sg, and to make a donation, please search for the Singapore Book Council Limited. This webinar is presented to you as part of AFCC Digital, and we have more similar events coming up in the next few months. So please do check out the AFCC website at www.afcc.com.sg, or follow us on our social media for more information. Our media handles are currently being shown on the screen right now. And thank you everyone for joining us today, and we wish you have a pleasant weekend. Rushton will stay on for a few more minutes for anyone else who has questions. So please key in your questions through the Q&A function. You may leave the webinar if you want to by clicking Leave Meeting, and please note that once this session closes, all participants will be logged out automatically. My name is Carlo from the Singapore Book Council. Remember to be someone's reason to smile today. Good morning, and thank you very much, everyone.